Hey now, folks. John Duffin here with Duffin Media, and this is Zach Carlin here from Summit Chasers Network, live and in the flesh. Welcome, folks, to a first of a series of some summertime fun, where we get to, what the hell do we get to do?
Summertime fun, that's new. We didn't script that part.
No, we didn't. You want to bring in something improv every once in a while. But what we want to do is increase team performance, skyrocket profits. By the way, a lot of this is my buddy Zach idea, who comes up with these brilliant ideas. And what we get to do, he and I have had some experience carving some things together. And as a result, we get to solve some business problems. Folks, if you are watching us on Facebook Live, great. Love having you. If you are here, drop a note in the comments. We will see it and respond in kind. Zach has promised giving away fabulous prizes. And so I defer all that to him.
None of this is scripted. Yet another ad-libbed thing. I mean, I will. The prizes might not be... People won't be excited about them, but yeah, no, let's do it.
No, that's fine too. And if you're watching us on LinkedIn Live, that's great too. Same deal. We'll see you in the comments. Drop a note in the comments because we want this interactive. Well, this is very cool. Tommy Kenyon, thanks for joining us live, man. Love the fact that you continue to support us. I think that's great. Folks, what are we doing? We both have some business acumen, or so I'm told. My buddy Zach Carlin, you take a moment, sir, to introduce yourself.
Very much appreciated, my friend. Founder of Summit Chasers Network, former 3-time professional athlete. That is a professional athlete in 3 different sports, which is why it takes me so long to get out of bed in the morning anymore. I've flipped half a dozen brick and mortar businesses myself, most of those over in Canada. Actually, I'm in Canada right now, so here in Canada, in my homeland. And I've been a coach for the last 17 years now. Actually, I was doing some math the other day, and last month it was 17 years, almost to the day, when I got my first coaching client. And I had a question. I was talking to somebody, I think it was one of our clients or one of our clients, and they asked, well, where did you get your coaching acumen from? Where did you get the prowess? Where did you get the love for coaching? And a lot of it came from, actually, the first thing that's on there is when I was doing addictions counseling. So I went through the program myself. I was I am a former addict, very, very long time ago. And I went through the program myself, and I realized just how many things that we keep on our minds that shouldn't be there, how many things we stop from entering our minds that should be there. And how do we formulate, how do we create performance? How do we increase our own performance? How do we increase our own, I don't like to say happiness, because when we think happiness, we think, margaritas on a beach, right? That's not what life is all about. Although that is, life, it has its perks, right? But it's how do we balance everything, right? So I've been kind of obsessed with human performance, both mentally, physically, and emotionally for the last 17 years. And that's really where it came from, was my initial job as an addictions counselor.
Look, for me,
over to you, John.
Yeah, great, good stuff. Oh, right. Oh my God. So first off, not a 3-time athlete or not in 3 different sports. I'm the type that, like, when I run, I get a lot of pats on the head and good for yous. So we don't have everything in common. We come at this in different places. But what I can say about myself is not my athletic prowess, but it would be more of my ability to communicate. So I've been in the communications field, a sales and communications leader for over 25 years. That's the broadcast digital ad space. I've had the chance to present in a lot of ways, in a lot of settings, to a lot of different people. And typically there is money involved when I'm presenting. And that's been a joy and a gift of mine. I've been surrounded by some of the best teachers, coaches, trainers, business leaders in the nation. I've absorbed a lot. I have learned from, and I have shared with. All that being said, have generated, in terms of sales revenue for me and the teams I've led, over $150 million and counting. I've developed my own company over the last 4 years that morphed from a voiceover company to a an executive communications company. I get to host a podcast. Zach has been kind enough to guest on my podcast, and I, in turn, was lucky enough to guest on Zach's podcast, as a matter of fact. My whole deal is helping people find their best, most true, authentic business voice. Because when you do, the results you want typically follow. And when you don't, and when you're not speaking authentically, this is where often problems will arise. So the ability to tell stories, my love for a good story, my love for the fact that I can engage in progressive relationships not only makes me feel good, but I can get to help others lead better, more true, authentic, and productive lives, business lives as a result. So that's what I get to do. And Zach and I were lucky enough to have met up with the beauty of LinkedIn, and it's been on ever since. So I'm really happy about that. And so the idea that was created, Zach created this, so I'm giving him full on credit, was a series of situations that we wanted to do these lives, tight, short, to the point, whereas you could look at it as a series of what ifs. Does this directly apply to your business? Are you aware of other business people in your world that have encountered this before? Does it feel vaguely familiar? Because we can all learn from setups. We can all learn from other people's shortfalls. And as a result, it's what we're able to build. Zach is the foundations guy, builds businesses literally from the ground up. I'm the communications guy. How do you effectively communicate all of what you've built so that there is buy-in and in turn results? And heck, what we just thought we would try is tonight, for the first time, drop a case study. If you watched us live before, you know we did something very similar in the setup. So Zach, am I missing anything at this point in terms of the overall setup? I often do.
I don't think so. Really, the goal of these is to get people involved, to speak to actual issues, scenarios, problems, challenges, wins, whatever it is, to the people that we're speaking to. I've been on a lot of webinars. I've put on a lot of webinars, and sometimes you get on the webinars and you're like, the description sounded good, and then I got on here, had nothing to do with issues that I have particularly, or it might paint a very broad kind of 30,000 foot picture, but it doesn't get to the root cause, right? It just doesn't quite hit. So to keep these as natural as possible, to get them as pointed as possible, and to get everybody as interacted and involved as possible, I think it's going to be the best way to do it, and it's fun. We want to have fun when we're doing these. We want to make webinars fun again. I think I said that after the last one. I don't know how well it went over, but I think it's to make them interactive. You had a long day at work, or maybe you're still at work. Pour yourself a cup of whiskey, a beer, tea, whatever you want to partake in, and just come and enjoy and go over some, ask questions, get involved, drop something in the chat that maybe a challenge that you're having that pertains to or could go deeper into the case study that we're discussing. But really, again, the biggest thing is we want to provide value, we want to help people out, and we want to have some fun while we do it.
All the way through. And I love that, man. And also too, that it's a gift. You can take something away that you could use tomorrow morning. Or again, if you're still working, great. If there's something you could take from this directly, and that's always the intention here, is that again, that we're not talking at you. We're speaking with you. We want the feedback. We want the agreement, disagreement, whatever it may be. Great. How does it relate to you? All of it, because again, if you can take this to work tomorrow, then maybe your day goes better. Maybe the week goes better. Maybe results go better. Who knows? Maybe you're hitting that bonus. Folks, we're in July now. So I'm thinking for myself, in all of the years, including this week too, you're coming off of 4th of July. So painting a picture, right? Before the hard case scenario that we're going to bring up, right? It's 4th of July. And by the way, for me, when I worked, I added on several days after 4th of July because why not? the weekend that went in, and of course the Monday and Tuesday, and I'm going to ease my way back in, and then I'll really get at it the 7th or 8th or 9th or Labor Day. But unless you own your own company, and unless everything's going swimmingly at your own company, you often don't get that privilege. So Zach created this situation. Mind if I bring it up?
Go for it.
It's time. All right, man. So you want to read this since you were so eloquent in doing it?
Yeah, and I'll try to do it with some gusto too,
Oh, you always do.
All right. So yeah, right. So this, first of all, this case study, obviously this is going to be fairly broad to start. In the future, we want everybody who's listening, we want everybody who comes to these to bring their own case studies, and then we can pick or choose 2 or 3 of them, and then we can kind of dive a little bit deeper, more specifically. But for this one, because we are a little bit over halfway through the year, like John said, there's so many businesses that are in this exact scenario, that are in this exact state. So you had grand plans and goals for 2024. You started out really strong. There was a great speech given. Everyone had the Christmas part, not everybody, but a lot of people had the Christmas parties. I was at a few of them where they got everybody fired up. Everyone was drinking. They said these grand plans and goals. They got off to a great start, right? Got everybody fired up. And because of this, maybe your sales team got off to a great start with these new incentives that are coming out, big goals being made, and maybe they even had a good pipeline built up from the end of the year push. We see that a lot. They push at the end of the year. They have a pipeline built up, trying to hit their bonuses. They're trying to hit goals from the year. They're trying to hit whatever it is. They're trying to get those last pushes. Or sorry, you're trying to hit that last push for the end of the year. So you have a good pipeline built up. So the beginning of the year sometimes is off to a great start because you have that pipeline. New processes were rolled out with the promise to keep momentum going all year. The goals that were set seemed well within reach at the time. There was no way with the momentum that you had that you weren't going to hit them and be able to expand into new markets, new products, finally hire somebody to run your HR department. I put that in there because that's a pain for a lot of people. They really want to offload a lot of HR tasks. However, June, or now I guess July, hits and you realize the spark is dwindling. The set goals are starting to seem not so easy. They're starting to seem not so easily reached. So you start to panic a bit. And as the business owner or a top level manager, you start looking into ways to boost sales, to boost profits, boost revenue really quickly to get back on track. However, nothing really seems to stick. And now you feel like you're at a loss. What do you do? John, what do you do? And we have this broken up into 3 kind of simple topics or simple kind of focal points. All right. So I would ask these 3 questions. I'd ask these 2 questions, and then after these questions, I would ask a 3rd question. But the first question is, how did they come up with the goals they set for that year? And what was the strategy to hit those goals? What was the strategic initiative behind the goals that you placed? There's a big misconception with goals being the strategy, goals being just a set of values, fluff pieces, these types of things. So what was the strategy that you're going to use to hit the goals? Number 2, how are these goals and processes communicated? How did they get across? Was everybody clear on them? Was it just, maybe the top level leaders that were clear, and maybe the mid-level managers or the sales team or the customer service team or the contractors that were out there or the engineers that you had? Was everybody really, really clear on what these initiatives were and what these goals were? And then the 3rd one, after we answer those questions, is how do you avoid this going forward? So John, where do you want to start?
Listen, first off, I'm relieved you broke those 3 because you're literally lay that setup and then you're like, John, what would you do? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, Christ, that's hard. But for me, there's no reason to do anything other than to at least take 1 step backwards. Like, you have to. You absolutely have to, because like, it's one thing. I don't know if folks, if you've been on webinars where it's like the person's firing off answers like it's talk radio. What I would say is, here's the deal. The easiest way to communicate is to always reinforce what was said. And the only way you could do it is say it right the first time. And if you don't say it right the first time, each successive conversation gets more difficult. But at some point, you have to say it exactly right. So what would I do? I would take a walk backwards. I've been in a lot of organizations where they've done business plans a lot of different ways, and the spreadsheets and pivot tables and matrices and so much math. And I'm good at math. Apparently not good at English, but I'm good at math. And so, but what I would say is, here's the problem. That it all begins with legit buy-in. Because unless you're the one that is personally going to go out and get all of the KPIs accomplished, unless you are all the salespeople that's going to deliver all the revenue numbers, well, then somebody has to buy in. And folks, if you're watching, how many times have you been in organizations where you have been told what to do in general? Not quite because I said so, but somewhat like that, right? I've seen organizations, I've been a part of it where like numbers are just handed at you. Has anyone ever encountered that before? Well, it gets even more frustrating if there was a lot of consternation to get the numbers. So here's, to me, what would you do? There's an opportunity to establish real culture in an organization where culture has numerical value, which means at the beginning, at that holiday party that Zach was alluding to, and we're all having the time of our life, and this is great. And then it's now, here's the plan. It had to have made sense based on a series of conversations. Now, not did everybody agree, because that's asking a lot. That all of your teams are going to, all be like, I totally think we're going to do this. But there has to be buy-in of some sort. Do you have the right personnel to do the job? Have you spoken with them, and are you completely clear with where they're coming from in terms of their capabilities? They're often the boots on the ground people. Have you spoken with them? Have you listened to them? So what would I do? I would go back and recall that entire series of conversations. You do not need to turn it into 6-hour dissertations, but the reminders of what occurred have to be put in place, because you can't move forward if it sounds like you're out there all by yourself. You're the one supposed to be steering the ship as the leader, sure. But unless you've got people that are like, oh, I remember that. Oh, yeah, that was true. Oh, yeah, that's right. I said that, or I felt that, or I did that. Because then you can ask the most basic of questions. What changed? What did you see? What happened? What occurred? And what do you foresee? Get their buy-in for course correct too. So what would I do? I'd revisit those series of conversations. If something fell short, you'd know. You would absolutely know, because you're going to net point two. You need a new buy-in. Okay, so now here's where we are. Here's exactly where we are. This occurred. We understand this series of circumstances took place. And now here's where we are. And now we need to make another move. The leader leads, but they don't do it in a vacuum. Bring your people into the communication. Get every bit of input from them, and then you're expected to make a new decision. So my thought is literally this: revisit the prior conversations, shore up any holes in the conversation. Did I fall short as a leader? If so, how? Fix it. Did they fall short as a team because they gave you information that wasn't true? Okay, identify it and correct it. New course of action, put it in motion. That's what I would do. Oh, that's all I have.
Perfect. No, that's good. That's great. So the first thing I would do is I would back it up even more than that.
Good.
So you'll see with a lot of businesses that run into this same issue where their year kind of looks like a like the Grand Canyon. Start out really strong, and then there's a whoa in the middle, and then somewhere along the way, they hit their big break, or at least a wave, we'll say, right? And then waves can do this. Look at your historical data. Look at the proper data, because so often businesses use incomplete data to base their forecasted goals and decisions off of. Right? They use they use data from October, November, December, when everyone is working to get the good bonuses for the holidays, or last ditch efforts to hit the goals that we set from earlier in the year. That now they're kind of last ditch trying to get everything together, so that I promised my wife we were going to get a pool earlier in the year, because that was the goals that we set, and that was the commission that my boss said that I could get. So I better go. So and then when they go into the new year and they start setting these goals, they're basing it off of that high that they got from that October, November, December push. Right. So you're using data based on it's an inconsistent process. You're basing the data off of an inconsistent process. So that's a huge problem. So I would back it up even more than that. Do you have a history? Does your business have a history? Does your profit margins? Does your sales revenue have a history of doing that dip, of doing the wave, inconsistent? Oh man, every year in October we're struggling, and we kind of something happens and we pick up. Right? Is that because our process is inconsistent and our sales organization is they're putting their bootstraps on and they're really trying to hit those bonuses? Or is it our ICPs? Is that just their buying pattern? Like, what is it? Use the complete data to make your decisions, right? So often, especially when you're making decisions as a leader, as a business owner, whatever, in that stressed state, like when you're like, we're missing our goals. What do we do? Your ability to make decisions and to be creative is here, right? It's so narrow. Right. So it's hard to expand and look at that whole picture. So it's really important to take a step back, like you said, but use the full picture, use the full breadth of data that you have to make a better decision going forward. Right. So that means, were your goals, or are you going to set goals based on an honest company SWOT analysis? Did you identify strengths that you could leverage, opportunities that you could utilize this leverage in, right? Weaknesses that maybe you need to mitigate or improve upon, and then threats that could take advantage of some of your weaknesses. Did you take a full, was it an honest look at the data and your company structure, your company strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And then base your decisions, base your forecasted results, base your strategy off of leveraging those things, right? And then from there, when you use that, right, you can then, when it's very clear, now you communicate that very clearly. Now, this is alluding to what you said. When you communicate these things, sometimes you communicate them so you understand them. You were the one that came up with the strategy, so you would communicate it as if this person also came up with the strategy and was looking at all the data that you had and has that 30,000 foot view that you do. No, you're communicating to somebody who's just trying to be able to afford the pool that they promised their wife, or somebody who just deals with customer issues all the time, or somebody that just deals with the customer after the sale is completed and they're fulfilling upon your, whether it's a software or it's a product that was sent out, whatever it is, the service that you're providing, that's all they're seeing. So you need to communicate this in a way where you are unifying the whole team. And you don't just communicate it once. Everyone thinks they're adults. I communicated it once or twice. They should get it. I sent an email and I said it in that meeting, and then we sent out a text message, so it should be good. No.
And we all high five, so that means it's a bonded contract.
Yeah. And they don't make sure that they understand. They don't put once you have a strategy, once you have an initiative that you need to push out as a leader, you need to now put your coaching and training hat on. Okay. They understood the 3 sentences I just said, but are they able to take action on it? Do they understand it to the point that they can execute upon it? Those are 2 completely different questions. Do they understand it? Can they execute on it? You need to make sure that they can execute on it. In order to get them to the point where they can execute on it, you need to communicate it. I don't have a number. It's different for everybody, but a lot. And you need to make sure you need to sit down, especially with key players, sit down with key players and coach them through it and have them teach it back to you. Have them explain it back to you. This is our initiative. This is the role that you have to play. Here's the goals that we need to hit. Here's the strengths we're going to leverage. Here's the weaknesses we need to improve on and negate as of right now. Here's the new markets we're trying to penetrate. Here's whatever it is, right? Here's our projected market share here. do you understand what we need to do now? What are the steps?
And
As
you can't
opposed to
tell me,
just, here's what we're doing, go for it.
go rah rah, go get it, and then they don't, and now it's all on you, buddy. In our remaining few minutes, I'm going to ask the question, which is this: so it's July. If you are falling short, what would you suggest? Like, would be maybe one or two things that you could just suggest you do, say tomorrow. Literally, look, you're in the situation. I don't know what to do. I'm just back from the barbecue, but I've got somebody breathing down my neck. What would you suggest? Like, all right, are you falling short? What would you do with your team tomorrow to at least unpack this a little bit so that they can salvage July in the second half of the year?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. We were waiting for somebody to respond. I was like, all right, let's see who's in here.
All right. I guess that should have had a name. Zach.
So what can they do to salvage the year?
What would you say? Like, right? Because I'm just saying this part's great, but from a practical side.
So from a practical standpoint, what you can do to salvage the year. So there's a few things you can do. And the one thing that what I wouldn't do, and this is what most businesses do, is they start, like I said, when they get into this state of stress, oh, we're not going to hit our goals, we're not going to this, we're not going to be able to grow, I'm not going to be able to afford this or whatever. They start looking at quick fixes. They start looking at, okay, well, how can we upgrade our software? How can we, let's start doing mass email outreach when we've never done that before. Let's bring in a third-party vendor who says that they can use the latest AI to input a chat bot that tells people to come to our site, whatever. I'm making stuff up now. Yeah, but you see what I mean? They go after these quick fixes that aren't innately part of their strategy, that aren't innately part of what makes part of their strengths. They're just not. And I've seen this before with some companies. One in particular, I won't name any names, but they were struggling to be consistent because they were using incomplete data or data that was leading them astray from COVID. So they had a huge influx of income revenue, people wanting to redo their homes over COVID because they got an influx of cash. Nobody was home. They wanted their homes to look nice, etc. So they were basing their forecasting goals on on that data, on that performance during COVID. That is something that is outside of that they can't control. That they can't control, government shutdown or anything like that. So they based the data off that, and they weren't hitting their goals. They weren't hitting those numbers. It's unrealistic to think. So they started to panic. They started to narrow their view of things, and they just started grasping at straws. They started just doing what they know to do, which is find somebody who looks like they know what they're doing on Instagram, hire them, bring them in. And they brought in, it was an AI outreach, an AI cold outreach platform. They brought them in. It was $20,000 or $30,000 to bring them in. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So they were out quite a bit. They're out. I know it cost $20,000 or $30,000, but anything at the time to implement it, they took their current salespeople out to work this new process. So it encompasses a lot more lost revenue and time than that, right? So what I would do is this would be a good time to kind of take a step back, like you said. And if you want to get out of this hole, or if you want to end the year strong, one thing you can do is take an honest, what are your competitive advantages, and how can you utilize those competitive advantages to the utmost of their ability, to the utmost of your ability, right? To push those through to the end of the year, to push you through to the end of the year. What is your big economic differentiator? What are you innately the best at? And then how can you leverage that strength? Again, if you want to get yourself out of the hole, it's about leveraging your strengths, mitigating your weaknesses. So what strengths do you have? Now, this is a misconception. People are like, well, we've always had the best customer service, or we've always had the most integrated, the most API integrated software on the market type of thing. And I think just because they have those competitive advantages, they should be beaming with cash. They should be completely fine, right? But having a competitive advantage itself that's not going to be the thing that just increases your revenue. It's not going to make you wealthier. It's just having one, just having buying or selling a competitive advantage or a differentiator is not going to be the thing. Wealth increases either when your competitive advantage increases, right? You completely overshadow your competition, and you're able to increase that advantage at a faster rate than your competitors can catch up, right? So that's one way that you can utilize that competitive advantage to push ahead of your competitors and really end the year strong. Or you find a way to increase the demand for your competitive advantage. Now, there's a few different ways you can look at doing this, right? This is very broad. This is why it's good to get people involved so we can help more specific scenarios. So I'm going to try to keep this as broad as I can. Let's say you want to increase the value of that competitive advantage, whether it's a service you provide, software, or a mix of the two, or a goods sold. It requires increasing or progress in deepening your advantages in a few different ways, 3 or 4 different ways. Do the thing way better, right? So which increases your surplus, which is the gap between buyer value and cost. And one thing people tend to forget when it comes to increasing surplus, right, is the cost to the buyer, which includes their process in searching for your product or service, evaluating it, implementing it, waiting for it to arrive, getting it installed, all of these things. So how can you increase your surplus, right? The difference between the cost, the perceived value, and the cost, right? So how can you increase that? And then how can you get that message out there, right? Utilizing referrals and those kinds of things. The second way is broadening the extent of your differentiator, your advantage. So do more things, just do them slightly better. So one example of that would be Apple. Everyone has a phone. Okay, we want to increase our competitive advantage, right? We're going to go more abroad. So let's put out a tablet that will talk to the phone, right? It won't talk to anything else. And you can share data between the two. It's almost like you have one thing, but you have two. One's bigger than the other. This one you can carry with you. Okay, let's make it even more. Let's broaden our competitive advantage even more. Let's get these AirPods that only work with those that are a little bit overpriced, but that's fine because you know exactly where they are with these little devices that you use. If you lose your AirPods, you can say, oh, they're at the airport. I can go get them. Or the laptop, right? It talks to your laptop, right? You're broadening your competitive advantage by doing more things that complement each other that are slightly better than everybody else. So you can go broad, right? Third one is to create a higher demand. Create a higher demand for your advantage products or services. Now, there's a fun one. I can't remember the name of the family, but they started the pomegranate juice.
Okay.
And they're the only ones in the country that, I mean, I don't know if they're the only ones in the country that had a pomegranate field, like farm, but they found that they couldn't get rid of the pomegranates. There's so many of them. So they turned them into juice. And they realized through studies and tests and that kind of stuff, that pomegranate juice was very, very good for you. The antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and all that kind of stuff in it were very good, but nobody knew about it. So they put out a marketing campaign that said, this can solve these health issues. This is so good for you because of this. Are you waking up tired in the morning? Well, this is what you need. They created higher demand. They created the demand for it, right? By educating the their audience, by educating their ICP. So they created the demand for it. The other one is, and this is the other one that's on the top of my head, is you can just make it really, really hard for your competitors to copy you and mimic you and to get ahead of you, right? So that just means more hush hush in your development and that kind of stuff. But it's harder and harder to do that. That's a very old school way of thinking. So it's really just become way better at what you're currently doing. So go deeper. Make your competitive advantage so large that it overshadows your competition. Broaden the extent of your advantages so you have more things that only can really work with you. You offer more things that are just slightly better than other options in the market. You make it really easy. Make it really, really easy for your ICPs to be able to utilize your products and utilize more of your products or services. And then create higher demand for it. Educate people. Educate your ICPs. And when you do those 3 things, and again, that might not be something that you can do, all right, everybody, we're going to heighten our competitive advantage by next week, but you can help create a higher demand while you're developing, right? You can do more marketing, more content marketing is huge right now. You can educate them more. You can educate your salespeople more. What I would avoid is just all these short-sighted decisions. All these short-sighted, okay, we're just going to throw in a bunch of incentives for our salespeople and let's just hope that they hit their mark.
See, right? that you said you can't do all those things, but you're right. But you could at least begin that thought process, which would be a hell of a lot more productive than that tunnel vision, sort of, pointing fingers, name checking, finger pointing, name blaming. That. And this is often the risk that happens in the second half of the year. Things don't go your way. And that's really what I was driving at. You think strategically, like you said, if you can't do all those things, well, most companies can't, but they can do one of them. They could figure out what is their competitive advantage, or dumbing it down. How can you help people? How do you really help people and then make it known? So that you don't have to worry if other people are kind of like you. Just make it known. And to me, it just crushes the other sort of reactive thinking, because that's when the negative effect spirals and snowballs. And that's the whole point in terms of the practical part. Don't come in on July the 10th tomorrow and be like, all right, we gotta, because you often won't. Because that thinking won't get you those results. Those behaviors won't get you those results. Your team will not be reacting with that urgency, because chances are, one of my favorite coaching expressions that I get to use. It's one of my favorites because I didn't invent it. So my dear friend Karen Crane from Crane Communications, it only matters if it matters to them. So you can screech and scream all you want tomorrow about the shortfall, but if it don't matter to them, it don't matter. So find ways that it does matter and get the buy-in, so that this way you can go in and crush profits. You can go in and turn this year around. And if you're already doing well, beautiful. Then go in and finish, and then go crush it. We got plenty of time, right? Buddy Boy, you told us we were both under a tight deadline this evening. Anything else you want to touch on before we?
No, the biggest thing is, I think, would be don't let it happen again, right? Take a broader breadth of data, take a step back, right? Create space between the panic of not hitting your current goals and setting your company up for future success next year and the rest of this year too. I'm not saying you can't hit your goals. You definitely can, but don't do it to the detriment of doing the same thing next year, or absolutely crushing your goals, further than you ever could have thought for next year. And that really just comes down to use complete data, right? Be honest with the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of your business and the people within, the processes within, right? And then create the strategy, right? And don't get so focused on the goal. If you just focus on, okay, let's set a goal, let's just focus on that. We're going to do whatever we have to do to hit this goal, to the detriment of the future of our company, right? Look at your company and are we doing the right things? Are we taking the right actions? Do we have the right processes and people and communication processes in place to be the company that can do X? And if the answer isn't yes across the board, right, you have something to focus on.
Sounds perfect. Hey, folks, Zach Carlin happens to run the Summit Chasers Network, has a heck of a community that he's been putting in play. You got to keep following him on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. The brand new website we will touch on more next time. The brand smoking new website. Your boy John Duffin here with Duffin Media. We got lots more stuff to cover. We're thrilled that you joined us here live. If you're watching us on the replay, come up with some topics. We're not giving you to-dos, but just to make it more fun for you guys, right? So that we're back at you next time. We'll have more case studies and find ways that you can crush your second half of the year. Zach Carlin, thanks for joining me, my friend.
Let's do it. See you next week, y'all.
100%. Looking forward to it. John Duffin here, Duffin Media. Have a great rest of the night, folks. Be good. Talk soon. Bye.